This video will summarize Habit 5, Seek to First Understand, Then to be Understood, of the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So the author begins this chapter by telling us that we as humanity, we have such a tendency to rush in to fix things with our good advice, but we often fail to take time to really diagnose, to really deeply understand somebody's problem first. So really effective communication begins with listening. In school and such, we practice writing and talking and work on a lot of communicating, but really the key first thing we need to do is learn how to listen. And we aren't often taught how to listen. So somebody needs to trust you and feel safe around you to really open up. And that way, when they open up, you can understand them fully and counsel and give advice to them better. So empathetic listening is often, we don't do this. We often listen with intent to understand. We often do not listen with intent to understand, but instead we listen with the intent to reply. As soon as they stop talking, we want to tell them our side of the story, or like tell an example. We don't really seek to understand, but we should. So one father was saying, I can't understand my kid, he just won't listen to me. And the author replied, well, understanding involves listening to them. So we usually listen at one of these 4 levels: ignoring, pretending, selective listening, and attentive listening, which does require some effort, but I'm sure we can all think of examples when we were doing ignoring, listening, or even pretending. But there's a 5th highest form, which is empathetic listening. And this is really listening with that intent to understand and seeing from their perspective. So really, after survival, the greatest needs of a human being is to be understood, to feel like they're validated and appreciated. Diagnose before you prescribe. This might sound obvious, but it is super critical. Such as doctors, they really need to understand before they give a prescription. And same with good salesmen. They really try to sell a solution to a need and really understand their customer before they sell. And they need to have the integrity to say this will fix the problem or not. Sometimes if we're in a rush to really prescribe something, we don't fully understand and the prescription might be wrong. So key to good judgment is understanding. And then on the contrary, by judging first, a person will never fully understand. So there are 4 autobiographical responses. So these 4 responses, and you might notice this in your own life, how you respond to somebody talking. You evaluate, agree or disagree, yes or no. Probe, continue to ask questions. This might seem invasive at times, but you'll be surprised how often we do this. Advise, give counsel based on your own experience. And the 4th one, interpret. Try to figure out people based on their own motives and behavior. So you can see how critical interpreting and understanding is. So then there are 4 development stages of empathetic listening. So you kind of build on one another. So you might have to start with mimic content. You just repeat back what they said. Then rephrase the content. So you kind of repeat back what they're saying of just how you understood it. Reflect feeling, just say how you think they are feeling. And then finally, rephrase the content and reflect the feeling. So really saying how you are understanding them and how you think they feel. And so once you respond in that way, this stage really allows for open communication and trust between you and the person you're talking to. And so also once responses turn emotional, so such as like out of frustration, out of kind of just wanting to quick fix, that's when you really need to step back and go back to empathetic listening and respond logically. So make sure your responses aren't just out of pure emotion. Often when people start to open up, they'll unravel their own problems and find solutions easier. And I'm sure you've noticed this as you talk to somebody, you really open up, and you realize, oh, I see the solution. So this is what you really want. You want really people to open up, and maybe you will give them counsel, but sometimes maybe they'll find their own solutions. Empathetic listening, yes, it does take time at first, but in the end, it saves time when solving problems because you won't have to go back and re-diagnose and fix mistakes. But if you really understand, you'll be able to solve the problem correctly the first time. Understanding and perception. So as you seek to listen deeply and understand, you'll start to see that people have different perceptions of the world, and each perception is different but not wrong. They're not incorrect, just we see the world in different ways. So the next part of this chapter talks about seek to be understood. So seeking to understand really requires consideration and listening to others, but then there's also we need to seek to be understood, and this takes courage. And actually, as you start to deeply understand other people, this will help you talk to them in a way that will let you be understood better. So, for example, in a presentation, if you really understand the people you're presenting to, you might have to change your presentation to be more about what they're looking for. And so this is critical. And so you really need to understand them. And as you understand them, you need to express yourself. Maybe you have to change what you're going to say because now you understand the frame of reference they're in and how they're seeing this problem. One-on-one. So this is seeking to understand is something that you can always control. You can always listen deeply to people. You don't have to be pushy, but be patient and respectful. And really seek time to talk with those close to you one-on-one and really listen to each other. Also in employment, make sure that human element is just as important as the financial or technical elements of that job. The ending of this chapter, he gives the application suggestions. So maybe identify a weak relationship and write down the situation from their point of view. And next time you have an interaction with this person, really listen to understand and then compare their point of view that you're hearing to what you wrote down previously. Share with somebody that you want to work on this deep listening and seeking to understand, and then ask for their feedback later and see how they felt if they were understood that week by you. Watch people communicate. Cover your ears and just observe how they communicate with their emotions, because a lot can be said with just emotions. Next time you find yourself probing, evaluating, advising, or interpreting, maybe just step back and respond with, "Hey, sorry, I wasn't really listening to try to understand. Could we start over?" And finally, base your next presentation on empathy. Describe the other point of views and then seek to have your point of view understood from their frame of reference. This might take practice, but just try to start listening deeply to others. Thanks for listening.